Guys, how's it going? Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is John. This episode, I'll be reviewing the Atari Lynx handheld system. The one I have in my hand here is actually the original handheld that I picked up when it first came out. So it came out in October of 1989. The original retail price was $179.99 US dollars, so roughly 180 US dollars. If you include inflation today, in today's dollars, that's a little over 380 US dollars. So this thing was not cheap when it came out. It came with the system, it came with California games, packing game, came with a carrying case, and some other goodies as well. So you got more than just a handheld. When you compare that to the Game Boy by Nintendo that came out a couple months prior, that actually retailed for about 80 US dollars. So significantly less money to purchase the Game Boy. The battery life for the Game Boy used 4 AA batteries and lasted about 15 and a half hours, opposed to this thing takes 6 AA batteries, and gameplay-wise, it's about 4 to 5 hours of gameplay. So I remember specifically going through a ton of batteries. My parents would go to Price Club at the time or Costco, and they would just get a ton of batteries, and I would just burn through so many. Eventually, I got smart and got an AC adapter for this and just plugged it in the wall. But when you're on a road trip, it's hard to do that, of course. So I remember my parents being kind of upset that how many batteries this thing went through because it's ridiculous. And most of the battery usage actually is because the backlit screen. So it's got a nice 3.5-inch screen. It's kind of unique. It's a first for a number of reasons. It's the first and only system that's ambidextrous, meaning you can play if you're left-handed or right-handed. So you can play it like this, or you can flip it over and play it like this as well, which is kind of unique. And this must have been designed by someone who was left-handed, because I don't know why you would even think of doing that. Because I think most people who are left-handed probably are so used to playing video games that it doesn't bother them using the D-pad with their left thumb. It'd be kind of weird to play on a D-pad with your right thumb, I think, even for left-handed people, but it is what it is. It's actually the first system for sprites to actually do the zooming and distorting the sprites. So it even preceded the Super Nintendo with the Mode 7 in some degree. So it had that kind of pseudo 3D graphics, which the Game Boy couldn't do. So graphically, this thing is much more powerful than the original Nintendo Game Boy. The Atari Lynx 2 came out a little bit later. I believe it came out in 90 or 91. It retailed, they dropped the price down to $99, so assuming less. Just came with a system, and there was a couple games that did pack in with it. So for that time, Atari was kind of desperate to sell systems and push them. They really advertised that the battery life would last a lot longer. Where this lasts 4 to 5 hours, this would last 5 to 6 hours. So I wouldn't say much longer, to be honest with you. You still go through a lot of batteries. And it wasn't developed by Atari, but it was actually published by Atari. So we're going to show you some gameplay for these systems and go into detail, show you a little about what the system's all about. Let me know what you guys think of the Atari Lynx. We'll take it from there, and thanks for watching. Here's just a handful of games I have in my Atari Lynx collection. The system did okay. The first year that came out in 1990, Atari said their sales were about 500,000 units, or about 500,000 systems. In 1991, they claimed they sold a little over 800,000 systems. So it wasn't bad. They claimed it exceeded their expectations. But we will put that in perspective. Game Boy that same year sold 16 million or something like that. And I think total Game Boy sales, if you include the Game Boy Color, sold like 118 million systems all said and done. And it lasted for decades, where the Atari Lynx, a company called Telegames in the 90s, mid-90s, really started pushing it and kind of took it over essentially, and they started releasing a lot of games for it. But overall, it's a really fun game system to collect for because it's fairly inexpensive to collect for. In fact, I'm surprised how many games you can still find sealed, so new old stock. So that tells me that the games didn't sell very well at the time. There's still a lot of unsold games, and they're still around. So I'm going to highlight a few. Here's Checkered Flag, which is a great game. You got a lot of great arcade ports like Xenophobe is a great port. Pac-Land, a really fun platformer. Hydra is a fun one. But you got a lot of originals like Batman Returns, of course, Ninja Gaiden, we know. There's really two versions of the games that came out, style of games. You got the first version, this was the packing game that came with the original Model 1. It's flat, and the idea was that you could just stack them on top of each other. They found that the games were hard to get out, though, because they were flat. So they actually made kind of a lip here, and the idea was to make them easier to pull out, but they're definitely harder to stack, although they do kind of technically still do kind of stack. The system is still very alive and well with the homebrew market. This is a game I picked up. It came out in 2009. I just picked up this recently. It's called Zaku. Really fun game. It's like Airzonk. If you ever played Airzonk for the TurboGrafx, it's very similar to that. This is what it actually looks like. You can see the quality is right on par. There are also a lot of prototypes that were never released. This is one example. the Alien versus Predator prototype demo. Again, this is supposed to be a first-person shooter, very similar to the Jaguar. And that's basically what happened was Atari left focusing on the Lynx and went on to move on to the Jaguar. So here's some other games real quick. This is Bill and Ted. You got Pinball Jam, which is a fun pinball game. Of course, Rampage is a great arcade port. Zybots, Rygar, which was ported to the Amiga and other consoles at the time. My personal favorite still is California Games. Only 4 games were included in this. It was Surfing, BMX, Half Pipe, and I think Hacky Sack was a 4th one. So it's missing a lot of the other games in California Games, but still a fun port, very unique. This is another one, Stun Runner, a really great arcade port by Atari. So let's take a closer look at each one of these systems. Let's take a look at Model 1. I'll show you Model 2. We'll play some games, and we'll show you what it's all about. So here's a look at the first Model 1 Lynx. And see the D-pad right here on the left, and you have your BA. They kind of copied Nintendo. They put the B before the A. And here's your on, your off. This is your option 1. This is pretty much your pause, your restart. You have your option 2. And then if you hold down these top 2 buttons, it'll actually restart your system. If you hold down these top 2 buttons, it will actually flip the screen. As I mentioned before, you can actually play ambidextrous, so you can play like this, which is really interesting. Again, I'm not sure how many people actually did that. Kind of weird. Paint rubbed off, unfortunately. This is kind of odd. This has always kind of irritated me. This is where the batteries actually went into, and you had to put them down like this. And if you forgot to put the ribbon here like this underneath the battery, and you have the battery, they're really pain in the ass to get out, and kind of a poor design. And it shows you right here where plus and negative go. But they definitely fixed that on the Model 2 Lynx. That was definitely a smart move by Atari. This is where your brightness is, and then you also have your volume here. This is your headphone jack. On the Model 1 actually is only mono sound, which is kind of a disappointment. Model 2, they fixed that. They made it stereo. This is where they call it a Comlinks cable. You can play multiplayer. You actually link up to 17 additional links on some games, which is pretty incredible. You can play up to 18 player at once, including yourself, which is awesome. And this is where your power AC adapter would go into, and that's definitely something needed if you're playing this at home, because as I mentioned before, battery life really stunk on this thing. This came out a year before the Game Gear and even the TurboGrafx Express by NEC. So for a while, it was number 2 on the market for handhelds behind the Game Boy. Once the Game Gear came out by Sega really pushed out a lot of great titles by Sega, and that took number 2 spot. The Game Gear, to put it in perspective though, the battery life for the Game Gear was like 3 to 4 hours. So it was even worse than this, which is crazy. And this, you're wondering where the actual cartridges go, right? They actually go here. This actually would open up. So the idea is you put the cartridge facing down like so. Oh, I actually have a game in here. What I have, this is Kung Food. Paid $5 for it. So yeah, the games are fairly cheap, fairly inexpensive. 72 official games came out for the system when it's all said and done. So pretty fun to collect for. Definitely look into it. Let's take a look at Model 2. Okay, so here is a closer look at the Model 2. This is definitely one I prefer over the Model 1. A lot of improvements. So I'm going to show you some overall over the system, and then I'll show you some gameplay over some games later in the video. But first differential notice is the D-pad is much thicker than the first one. So let me show you, for example, comparison. Here's the first one, very skinny. They've definitely improved, made it a little bit more thick, okay? Your on button, your power off, this is your backlight button. So they've added this button here. The idea is to save battery life, but it's so dark without the backlight on, it's almost impossible to play, to be honest with you. So you're better off just leaving it on. Again, you only save about an hour of battery playing time anyway, even on this model. So it's really not that much improved. You have your options, same buttons here. You can flip it like you play left-handed, upside down if you prefer. Technically, you can use these buttons too to play, although if you're playing right-handed, it just makes more sense to use these. It's more natural. Here's the speakers here, and it's a stereo now, which is nice, with headphones on, of course. This is your brightness. This is your volume. Same connections before, power. You have your Comlinks cable, and you have your headphone jack. This is where the games now would go into. This is California Games, the pack in for the original. All right. And it has nice rubber grips here as well. Okay. As far as batteries go, they go on the bottom here. There was no connection to hook up to a TV or play through your TV. That would have been cool, but that was way too of its time. Never came out for this. So brief history over the Lynx itself. 1987, a couple ex or former Amiga employees. One was R.J. Mickle, M-I-C-A-L, and Dave Needle. They worked together at Amiga. They left, joined a company called Epyx, E-P-Y-X. Epyx is best known, probably, they did a handful of games, but they're probably best known for this game right here, California Games, which was ported to a number of home computers, home consoles. A really fun game. They did winter games and other games like that too. Anyway, long story short, they left in 1987. They had an idea. Let's develop for Epyx a color handheld system. The winter at the Consumer Electronics Show in 1989, they debuted it. They basically Epyx had lost funding. They wanted a backer, so they reached out to Nintendo and said, "Hey, Nintendo, would you be interested in basically publishing our handheld? We have all the stuff made." Nintendo turned around, ended up doing the Game Boy, as we all know. They reached out to Atari. Atari said, "You know what? We will do it. We'll change the name," which at the time was called the Epyx Handy. They changed it to the Atari Lynx. So Atari would handle all the distribution, all the publication, all that good stuff, right? They would back it, whereas all the development was handled still by Epyx. So a lot of the games that came out for Lynx were actually done by Epyx. Later on, Telegames in the mid-90s produced a lot of games for the Lynx when it was pretty much on its deathbed. So basically that's how it came to be, how Atari ended up getting it. It did okay for Atari. Unfortunately, a lot of the downfalls was just the battery life was terrible. The price was really expensive. Nintendo, I think, just hit everything. Other than the Game Boy being in black and white, I think it really hit home runs. The system came out a year before the Game Gear, the NEC TurboGrafx Express, so it had a head start, so to speak. By the time Game Gear hit the market, Sega had a lot of quality games coming out for the Game Gear, and the Game Gear eventually took second place. To put it in perspective, Game Gear battery life was like 3 to 4 hours on 6 batteries, where this is 4 to 5. So this is even better than the Game Gear, which was terrible to think about. Processor-wise for this handheld, it's two 16-bit custom CMOS chips at 16 megahertz, 3.5-inch screen, as I mentioned before. It can 75 frames per second as far as gameplay goes. There's 4,096 different colors you can choose from. On screen, it can display 16 at a time per scan line. So it was pretty powerful for the time. Definitely a lot of great games came out for it. Resolution for the system was 160 by 120 resolution as well. So let's take a closer look at some games and let me know what you guys think. Thanks. First game we're going to check out is California Games. So let's turn this on. Okay. You have BMX, surfing, half pipe, foot bag. It's kind of awkward here to get the camera to film it. Let's do surfing. What I really liked about this port of California Games is it didn't matter how you land. A lot of the other ports of California Games, you have to land at the same angle you took off. You hold down the button to spin faster. Get more air here. Hold on. There you go. Wipe out. Love the music. Let's pause it. I'm going to flip it as well, so I'll show you what I mean. See how it flips the screen? Now I can play like this. Isn't that pretty wild? And it's not necessarily you hit... Okay, hold on. Now I'm playing upside down. You should hit the first button first and then the second button. So first and the second, kind of weird. Let's do BMX. Oh, Wipeout. Damn. So this port is actually pretty unique. So the Lynx is kind of an interesting name that Atari chose, and Atari decided to stick with the kind of theme of calling it a wild animal, Lynx. They called the home console a Jaguar, as we all know. But I still think Atari should release a new console. Now, hear me out on this. I think they should call it the Atari Cougar. Now, here's what it'd be geared towards. Okay, geared towards young men. Okay, it'd be kind of an older system geared for young men, and the cartridge slot would be very loose. What do you think? You think would that sell very well? I think it would probably sell pretty well, honestly. But anyway, so let's try a different game here. And all joking aside, and let's check out Blue Lightning. Here's Blue Lightning. This is one of my favorite games. I got this early on for the Lynx. Custom mission code. Let's turn the volume up. You can lock, and then if you hit option, or the spin is, yeah, it's this third button here, spin. This came out for the Jag CD as well, but man, I'll tell you, the Lynx port of this is so much better. I'll walk his target here. You can see how colorful the system is. Now with a limited amount of missiles. See how the zooming effect and distortion I was talking about with sprites? That's pre-mode 7 there, guys. Pre-Super Nintendo. Game Boy couldn't do that. Couldn't do the pseudo 3D graphics. Let's check out Rampage. Now here's a unique thing about Rampage. Let's start. There's actually a unique monster that's exclusive to the Atari Lynx port. And there's this rat. I think it's like his name's like Larry the Rat. This guy was not on the arcade. He wasn't ported to any other home consoles, but only Lynx. I love this game. It's hard playing through my camera, so bear with me here, but I love eating these guys. It's funny, when you die in this game, you're like all naked. This is honestly one of my favorite ports of Rampage. If you haven't played Rampage, I definitely recommend you check it. This is a must-own for the system, by the way. Object is to just take down buildings. There you go. So many games I want to show you, but just due to time constraints, I don't want to make this video super long. But this is Batman Returns. Came out during the time of the movie, of course. Again, this is a unique port. It's a beat 'em up. These clowns are throw firecrackers at you or whatever, bombs. Kind of unfair. You can't really kick in this game, which is kind of weird. You have a mute button. Oh. It's kind of weird. It takes the music off. It's kind of weird. I'm getting my ass handed to me. Oh, again, playing through the camera is not the easiest thing in the world. But you guys can definitely get the idea of the Lynx. I appreciate you guys commenting. If you guys subscribe, that means a lot. I'll do more reviews on systems. I have more game reviews planned, so be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you guys soon. Take care and game on. First off, guys, thank you so much for watching. Also, please subscribe. That means a lot. And if you want to stay in contact, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I also have a website, Gamester81.com, and I have t-shirts available that help support the show as well. And those are available at chopchopgoods.com.